So not knowing how your workflow goes when it comes to starting off with the bass, or start with the rhythm or some keys or a pad. But usually the key is to know your chords first, know what range you're playing in first before you can do anything else, because that will help you when you're building everything else. So let me make a new pattern, and then I'll add, let's say, a GMS for starters. So I'm going to select a pad. I'll just select a random one over here. Let's just say pad 2, this pad over here. Okay, sounds okay. So we can go to our piano roll, and what you can do is you can go on this little arrow over here, or actually over here on the stamp, and you can see there's melodic chords over here, melodic scales and percussions. Now you can use this to get chords. Now I'm gonna use a minor ninth. Select it, and then there it is. Put it all the way to fifth. There we go. Now I've got that on there. Let's put it on a pattern. Let's put it in our playlist. Let's play that back with the drums and hear how it sounds. It's a little bit high. Let's transpose that down. Now, if you don't like this key, you can select all of these, or you can just select one because they're grouped, and then raise them or lower them. Sounds much better on the sharp note over here. The bottom note is the root note. That's the C sharp. Or we can put it on a D sharp. But that's kind of high. We need it to be nice and atmospheric, so that works. And then we can look for another sound, maybe something much more lighter. Okay, that sounds very nice. And another thing, another setting you must always check on to make your sounds move on every plugin is usually, if you go to the filter section, you'll find that there's a cutoff switch. Now this cutoff switch is basically an EQ, and what it's doing is that it's EQing, cutting off certain frequencies depending with where it's set. Now here it's set on low pass, there's a band pass, and there's also a high pass. So what it does is it just cuts out the high frequencies, and if you move this, it will keep cutting up until it cuts everything out. So let me just play this back while I move this. So what you'll need to do is automate this switch so it moves according to your liking on your sound. So to do that in FL Studio, we select it, and then we go here and we go to browse parameters, and there we go, filter cutoff right here in the corner. It's already selected. Then we can right click on it and create an automation clip. There we go. So we can make this a little bit bigger so we can see. Can add a point here. So now, since our sound is not sustaining all the way through, we can remedy that by cutting it in the middle over here so that it starts playing again over here. And then we just add this again here, or we can make it different. By just extending this here, adding a point. Okay, so now let's rename and say pad, and then we're going to send it to an empty channel. That's insert 8. Rename this as well, or you can just use this and go on pad. It will also color the track. Now, if you have these chords already set, it's going to help you when you're adding your bass or your other plugins or your plucks and rhythmically. So it'll help you so you know where your keys are and what notes to use and which ones not to use, because it already has a guide. And good thing FL Studio has ghost notes, so you can see these notes when you're on another channel. So let's do that right now. Let's add some bass. So now with bass, you have a wide choice, and there's usually some go-to basses, like we could go on the bass that's on DX10. DX10 has E flute, it has a nice sub bass, and a log drum. The log drum is the mostly used one, so we're gonna just jump into that because I know everyone loves the sound and it sounds very clean. So let's go inside. There we go. So a trick with the log drum is that I usually put the log drum in and make my pattern, but then I also layer it with a sub sound like the E flute to get that really sustained low subs, because the log drum doesn't have so much subs because it's supposed to be playing on a higher range over there. But the low range is not really there unless you go really low, but then it doesn't really sustain. It cuts off very quickly, and if you add more to it, you're just gonna modify it too hard, but it's not gonna come out the same as the E flute lower bass. So let's add some bass to this. Okay, now we've got our bass pattern. Now we can just transpose that down to get that low sub. As you can hear, the low subs are not really there. They're not really powerful enough. So don't worry. You don't have to go on your effects rack and look for effects to really make it pump and make it real big. Hence, I spoke about the layering thing. So I can add another DX10 over here and go to my E flute, and then I bring back the log drum up there, and I just copy it and paste it on the E flute pattern. So now it sounds like this. So now let's transpose it down. Now you have that really low sub bass. If you're listening to this with a sub, you can really feel the rumble of this E flute sub bass. So now, for these two to be able to play nicely together, you have to do a little bit of EQing. So now let me send the E flute there on 10, and I'll just name this log. And I'll name this sub. So now remember, on the log drum we do not need all those lows, because those lows are coming from the flute. So the flute has the sub bass and the log drum has the higher harmonics. So now you put on your EQ. This is the frequency we're trying to cut out. So you can either use a shelf and just lower it a little, there we go. Now you can hear the E flute coming in, and then we can go on the sub itself, and let's look at it. There it is. It's in this range. It doesn't have so much in this area because it's not present, so we can still just cut it so that it only plays a sub. There we go. Now that sounds much more powerful without having to do so much effects and so much stuff. We'll get to that later. Okay, now let's play it back and hear how all of this is sounding.